Can you imagine calling the police to report a missing person, only to realize later that the person you're describing is yourself? Tonight, we dive into the chilling, true story of Daniel Carter, a man who vanished without a trace, yet meticulously orchestrated every single step of his own disappearance. There's no forced drama here, no fictionalized events. This is a real-life mystery, recorded in the voice of a man trying to step outside of his own existence. So watch closely and pay attention to every detail, because in this story, every small fact tells a much larger, more terrifying truth. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the police dispatch received a call about a missing person. The caller's voice was calm, measured, almost clinical. There was no desperation, no panic, not even a tremor in his tone. Yet the words he spoke carried a strange weight, a careful precision that suggested he had rehearsed every sentence. He explained that his friend, Daniel Carter, hadn't been seen for 2 days. He described Daniel's habits, his routines at the printing company where he worked the night shift, and even the specific brand of cereal he ate for breakfast. Every detail was intimate, personal. But at the time, no one noticed the unsettling calm in his voice. It sounded routine. In retrospect, however, this precision was the first clue that this was no ordinary missing person case. Daniel Carter was 29 years old. His co-workers described him as quiet, diligent, almost invisible. He lived alone in a modest apartment, and by all accounts, he was a man of routine. His bills were always paid early, his laundry was perfectly folded, and his dishes were washed immediately after every meal. He was the kind of person who could disappear into his own predictable life without anyone noticing. That night, something was different. When police arrived at Daniel's apartment, they found the door locked, with no signs of forced entry. Inside, the scene was bizarrely immaculate. The bed was perfectly made. The dishes were clean and neatly stacked in the cupboard. Even the decorative cushions on his sofa were aligned at precise symmetrical angles. People who go missing rarely leave a space so meticulously organized. Usually, there's a sign of hostaphone left behind, a half-empty coffee cup, clothes draped over a chair. Here, everything suggested Daniel had left voluntarily. But the sheer perfection of the scene hinted at something else. Deliberate, careful staging. Just as the officers were starting to feel uneasy, a neighbor came forward. The forensics team swept the apartment. No foreign fingerprints, no stray hairs, nothing. It was too clean. One detective noted, "It's like a ghost lives here." They even found that the vacuum cleaner bag was new, replaced just that day. Daniel hadn't just cleaned, he had erased himself. An elderly woman who lived across the hall, she recalled seeing lights flickering in Daniel's apartment long after he was supposedly missing. She heard movement, saw footsteps, the creak of floorboards. She'd assumed he'd just come back for something he'd forgotten. But knowing he was now considered missing, her observation took on a sinister new meaning. If Daniel was gone, who was inside his apartment? The lead detective, a veteran of hundreds of cases, felt a growing unease. He put a timeline on the whiteboard. Time of call, 2:17 a.m. Time of neighbor seeing lights. Approximately 2:30 a.m. The timeline didn't make sense. Why would the caller report him missing before the strange activity in the apartment? This new information sent investigators back to the one piece of evidence they had, the initial phone call. They traced the number, expecting it to belong to a concerned friend or maybe even a prankster. The result stunned them. The call had been made from Daniel Carter's own cell phone. At first, they thought it must have been stolen. But as they replayed the recording over and over, listening to the caller's breathing, the cadence of his speech, the distinct pauses between words, a chilling realization washed over them. The voice on the recording didn't just sound like Daniel, it was Daniel. Why on earth would a man report himself missing? The investigation deepened, and what they found next painted a portrait of a man obsessed with his own erasure. Weeks before he vanished, Daniel had taken out a new life insurance policy. This wasn't unusual, but the beneficiary was. He hadn't listed a family member or a friend. The sole beneficiary was Daniel himself, under a completely different, newly created identity. He had been meticulously planning a full vanishing act, constructing an alibi, a timeline, and a new life. He was playing both roles in his own disappearance, the missing person and the concerned citizen who reported him. The final piece of this disturbing puzzle came from a grainy security camera on the outskirts of town. At 3:48 a.m., just over an hour after he made the call, Daniel Carter appeared on screen. The digital forensics unit pulled Daniel's computer records. They found search histories for how to disappear, untraceable life insurance, and abandoned locations near me. He had researched police procedures for missing persons, learning exactly what they would look for. He was not just running away, he was conducting a counter-investigation against his own case. He was alone, walking calmly and purposefully, carrying nothing. No wallet, no phone, no bag. He was heading towards a large, abandoned construction site, a dangerous, restricted area filled with skeletal frames of unfinished buildings and precarious scaffolding, all shrouded in a low-lying fog. He entered the site, and he was never seen again. Days later, his body was discovered. He had fallen through a collapsed section of flooring in one of the unfinished structures. There were no signs of foul play, no evidence of a struggle, just a fatal misstep. The case was officially closed as a tragic accident. But the story doesn't end there, because the phone call still exists. A calm, controlled voice, narrating the beginning of his own demise without a hint of hesitation. Daniel had attempted to step outside his own existence to create a perfect timeline that proved he could vanish without a trace. But instead, he left behind a permanent record of his final act. This recording stands as a final testament to the mind of a man who tried to outsmart life itself and failed. Some crimes don't need a killer. Some don't even need malice. All they require is a plan and one single human mistake. Daniel Carter's story is a haunting tale of obsession, precision, and the ultimate fragility of control. He was methodical to his last breath, but in the end, one small misstep was all it took for his flawless plan to crumble. And we are left with his voice, a chilling echo that reported himself missing. A voice that, ironically, became the one thing he couldn't erase. If this story left you with a sense of unease, think about what it reveals about our own desire for control and the unpredictable nature of life. For more chilling true crime stories that will make you question everything, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss our next case. Thanks for watching.